Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Orkestra YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is episode 5. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, maybe try and do so because we're going to be using a lot of stuff that's been built during those episodes in this one. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel, comment below this video, send any type of feedback that would help me understand what type of content you would like to see and whether you're enjoying this. All right, so episode 5 is going to have a different scope compared to the previous episodes that were, I'd say, quite similar because we were building tools using OKPy. This one's going to be way less technical, probably shorter also. And what we're going to be doing here is building a Revit toolbar using Orkestra. And what we're going to be placing in that toolbar is a Dynamo script and a couple of OKPy tools. So basically those we've been building in the previous episodes. All right. So the scope for this episode, to be more precise, is going to be building that Revit toolbar with Orkestra. We're also going to see how we can share that toolbar locally and see how we can share the toolbar online. And as always, there will be some tips and tricks sharing all around the video. Okay, so a couple of steps that we're going to be going through. The first part is going to be the creation of the ribbon, which will be very straightforward. You'll see that. Second part is going to be the customization of the ribbon buttons that we'll be creating. Then we'll start talking about sharing. So the first part will be about sharing the toolbars locally. So that's what's available with the free tier of Orkestra, and it's already pretty awesome. And then we will be talking about the ultimate deployment experience for Dynamo tools and OKPy tools, which is Orkestra Online. So yeah, that will be the last step of the video. I won't spend too much time talking about that. There might be another video at some point that goes into more depth, but yeah, it will just be a glimpse of what you get with Orkestra Online. Okay, so let's do this. In this episode, we will once more be using Revit 2023 and Orkestra 1.6.1. Okay, so what we have so far is a set of OKPy tools as well as a Dynamo definition that I have not built in a video. If there's demand for that, maybe I will. But yeah, I'm just going to take it out of the blue. Basically, I'll describe it. It is a Dynamo definition that applies a scope box to a section box. So you can have a lot of scope boxes in your project, and you may want to adjust the section box of the project, of a 3D view in the project, exactly to that scope box. So that's what this tool does. And what we have also here is all the videos that we've been creating in the previous episodes. So there's the exploded axonometric, there's the room volume tool, the 3D geometry for the rooms, and then there's the 3D color scheme from episode 4, right? And we're going to create a toolbar with all of those tools. So one thing that I've been doing without talking about it too much is using this browser here inside of Revit. Now this browser can be opened through the Orkestra tab and the Orkestra browser button. This is what's going to take you there. So far, we only have access to the local part of Orkestra. The rest is disabled because, well, that's the part that requires some credentials and some subscriptions, but we're going to stay here in the local part for now. Okay, another thing I've been doing is switching between these two spaces. The first space is dedicated to Dynamo content. So what we're going to be getting here is Dynamo content wherever we're pointing at. I can right click here, click on the Add Workspace, and point at any location on my computer or any map drive, for instance, and have it display its content in here. Very cool thing is you get access to the location that you're pointing at, as well as all of its subfolders. So if you have some sort of organized structure for your Dynamo content that you're storing locally, you can simply point at it and benefit from that organization right here in the browser. And obviously, double-clicking a definition from the browser will launch it in a headless version of Dynamo, pretty much like the Dynamo player. All right, so what we are seeing here is a .dyn file. This is the scope box to section box tool that I was talking about a couple of minutes ago. And we're going to add it to the ribbon. One way to do so, and it's probably the most straightforward one, is to right click right here and go add to ribbon. And here it is. You get your Dynamo script in a Revit Ribbon button, just like that. Another way to do so is to enter the settings window of Orkestra right here. And what we can see here is that we don't have access to the online stuff yet, but we have access to the local settings. The first part is the workspaces. So this is the list of spaces that you're going to be pointing at, or the list of locations that you will be pointing at, and that will show in the browser. So what we can see here is that we have this February videos workspace, and this is the one we have here. By the way, we can add workspaces right here. We can arrange them by moving them up and down in a list. What we'll do here is move on to the second location here on this taskbar, which is the quick accesses, the local quick accesses. And what we have here is the list of all the quick accesses that have been pushed. So what we can see here is the scope box to section box.dyn definition that we've pushed earlier. It's here and it's here. So what we can do also is click this plus button right here, then browse on our computer to any location where we have our definitions stored, and we can pick a definition. For example, here I have this rename keys in schedule. This is going to add it in here, and then if I hit this refresh button, we will see it appear in our ribbon. So this is a way for you to add content to the ribbon without having to, well, go through the browser and right-click add to ribbon. I'm going to remove this one because I don't need it today. So now that it's removed, I can hit the refresh button and see it disappear and only keep the one that I'm interested in. Okay, so that was for the Dynamo definition, right? Pretty straightforward. Now what we're going to do is do the exact same thing, but for OKPy tools. What's going to be needed here is a switch to this space, because otherwise we won't see OKPy content. It will be filtered out. And now that we're in this OKPy space, we can browse our content. This is the exploded axonometric tool that I can right click and add to ribbon. It doesn't appear here because it appears here in the OKPy tab, right? But it's very similar to what we've witnessed with Dynamo, right? So let's do the same for the other tools. Add to ribbon, add to ribbon. Okay. Now we have all of our tools in the ribbon, but this is not exactly how I would like things to look. This is not super, I'd say, user-friendly or good-looking. This is just a button with some generic logo with a very long name, and I would like to improve this. I would like to make this a better experience for anyone who looks at it. So in order to do so, and this is step 2 of this episode, we're going to enter the settings window once more, and we go back to the local quick access settings. So what we have here, and this is what we're going to pay attention to now, is a list of customizations that are possible for local deployments. The first thing we're going to start with is the UI name. So this is the user-facing name that we can customize without having to change the actual file name of the definition. So things that we can do here is, for example, remove the extension of the file. So because no one needs to see that, right? Another thing we can do is make it shorter, but I feel like the length is not really a problem here. One last thing that we can do is add this symbol here. So this is a 0 between curly brackets. And this has been asked in the forum lately. Maybe it's not documented well enough, but hey, now you know. If you want your text to go back to line, so this part here, all you have to do is type a 0 between curly brackets between this text and the one that comes before. And if I hit refresh, here we go. Section scope box to section box without the .dyn. So this is already a little nicer, right? But that's not it yet. What I want to do here is also customize the tab and the panel where this appears, because By default, it will be pushed to the Orchestra tab in the Quick Access panel. Now we can improve this by unrolling this little list here of tabs. By the way, one super cool thing to know is that this also grants access to the Revit built-in ribbons or your previously existing add-in ribbon tabs. For example, I could even go with the default architecture tab of Revit, and then this is going to adjust to the tabs that are contained in this, the panels that are contained in this tab. And I can pick the datum panel, for example. And if I hit refresh, our quick access has disappeared from here because it is now here. So you can really bring your Dynamo definitions wherever you feel is more relevant for your users to find them without limitation to some tab that is predefined or anything like that. All right. So what we're going to do now is actually build our own tab because this is in most cases what we want to do. I'm going to name this YouTube channel tab. Okay. I'm going to hit the add button and here it is already added. Now we can create a panel because so far we have none because this is a brand new tab. And I'm going to call this one my panel, or let's call it axonometric tools because this is mostly what the tools we've been building have been about. So let's hit the add button. Here it is. Now if I hit refresh, the definition is not in datum anymore. It is in YouTube channel in the axonometric tools panel. All right. Maybe one last thing that we're going to do here is customize the icon because this is also something we can do. So I select my definition here in the local quick access settings list and I hit this button here. Now this will take me to, well, a browsing space where I can look for any location I'm interested in. Going to look at my YouTube channel folder, February videos, episode 5. And right here, I know that I have a little image that I had prepared for this tool. So this is supposed to represent a section box, right? It's a PNG file, transparent PNG file, and the transparency is going to be kept when being used as a Revit icon. And by the way, you can bring any image really. There's a converter that's built in, but it's always nicer if it's the right size to begin with. And well, just so you know, if you don't already, the right size for a Revit button icon is 32 by 32 pixels. So 32 by 32 PNG will be the best initial base. Here we go. We have our icon. It's a preview that we have here, but if I hit refresh, here it is, applied to our button. Now we have completely customized this Dynamo tool, right? Okay, now we want to do the same thing for our OKPy tools that are still here. Not looking so good. There's no real way to differentiate them unless we read the names, and even the names are not that user-friendly. So let's improve all of that, right? What we can do here is still in the settings window. In the same way we have two spaces here for the Dynamo content and the OKPy content, well, we have a little drop down here that lets us switch between the two types of content. And if I go to the OKPy item, here I will find my 3 OKPy tools. I'm going to customize their UI name first. So I'm going to use the same 0 between brackets here. And I'm going to remove the file extensions. This will make more sense to our users. So let's add a space here. Let's go back to line here. Okay, this should look much better, right? Well, it already takes less space in the ribbon, which is a good thing if we intend to build a lot of tools and build a full ribbon for our users. Right, so that was step number 1. Step number 2 is the tab. So exactly as we've seen for our Dynamo tools, we can put these tools anywhere we like in the architecture tab, in the structure tab. That's really up to us. I'm going to put them next to the previous one in the tab that we've created a couple of minutes ago. So the YouTube channel tab, right? I'm also going to put them in the axonometric tools panel, though I could create a separate panel for them with the same ease. It's just like hit the add a panel button here, but we're not going to do that because, well, we don't need that. Now that I've done all of that, I can hit the refresh button, go back to the YouTube channel, and see that all my tools are now brought together, which is pretty cool. Now, before I consider myself done, I'm just going to customize the icons because I have a couple of icons prepared for these tools. All right, so this one was for episode 2, and this is the one, the little exploded axonometric icon. Then we have our room volumes, and I have an icon for that as well. All right, there it is. So these little blue boxes represent the 3D geometries of the rooms. And then the color scheme. That was episode 4. And here it is. So same volumes as room volumes, but with some colors. All right, we hit the refresh button. And there we go. Now we have all of our tools put together right here in our custom tab. Maybe one last thing that we can take a look at here, which we haven't talked about yet, is the button size. So one thing we can do is change the button size to small and have our buttons stacked like this, right? So this allows us to, save some screen real estate and group tools that need to be grouped together, well, in a way that will make more sense, because this is all about making the interface user-friendly. All right. So this is pretty cool, but I want to keep them as large buttons. Awesome. Well, this really doesn't look too bad, right? I mean, it's a matter of taste, and it depends on how talented you are at making icons for your tools. But, it doesn't get much simpler than this, does it? Okay. Now that we've done all of this, let's run the tools just so you can see how it operates. First thing I'm going to do is run my scope box to section box tool, which is a dynamo tool. And we can't really differentiate that here, between what's OKPy and what's dynamo. And I think that's pretty awesome. So here I have this scope box called North Wing. This is South Wing. And this here is called Lobby. I'm going to launch this tool. And just so you know, this is something that's pretty similar to the Dynamo player, where the first launch takes a little longer because it's initiating a Dynamo instance, a UI-less Dynamo instance. And once that instance is set, then it's going to run the definition. This means that the first run is always going to take a little longer than the other ones, but running a tool a couple of times will be much faster afterwards. So here we are with our first run. This is opening a little data shapes user interface. It looks a little messed up, but this is just because of the resolution of my screen, really. So please don't pay too much attention to that. Another piece of information here is you don't necessarily need data shapes UIs for the tools that you launch through the Orkestra player. It is going to build an automated UI for based on the isInput nodes in your scripts, exactly in the same way the Dynamo player does. So for this example, I still needed data shapes UI because, well, there is no dropdown for scope box selection and there is no dropdown for 3D view only selection. So this is why I had to build my own UI. But if you want to rely on the built-in input nodes of data shapes and have them used to build a form, this is 100% possible and taken care of by Orkestra in a pretty neat way, really. This is also something that I probably do a video to cover. All right, so what I wanted to do here is pick a scope box, then pick a 3D view. So I'm going to use the one I'm on right now and hit the apply button. Now what I should be seeing is, all right, I get to see my section box adjusted exactly to the North Wing scope box. Now, just to show you what I was talking about earlier, so the fact that it's much faster the second time around, I'm going to hit this button again, and you'll see that it only takes a couple of seconds to trigger this little UI once more. All right, let's go with South Wing this time, and keep the same view, and hit apply. And there we go. So we can use our scope boxes to set up our 3D axonometrics, which is pretty awesome because those same scope boxes can be used to well frame some plan views, and you can get everything to align perfectly. So that's pretty cool to have. All right, now that was step number 1. Step number 2 of running the tools is going to be the exploded axonometric. This is straight from episode 2 where we built this tool. Now this is opening OKPy in a different way than we see it as an editor, because in here, well, we've covered this in the videos, but as the editor, you get to see the full code that's running behind, as well as the little debug console and the syntax highlighting helper. In here, we only get the UI. So this is the user's experience. Now this one is expecting a couple of selections. It's expecting a 3D reference view. We're going to use this one. A title block type to use for the sheets that it's going to stack the exploded axonometric views on. And then it's expecting a sheet name and a sheet number. This has been run successfully. Let's make sure it really has. All right, 0001 axo. I can see that there's a couple of views in here. All right, awesome. Now these are the exploded axonometric views for the exact section box that we have specified with our little dynamo tool. Okay, I'm just going to make this look a little nicer by removing the titles. So viewports, I do not want the title, right? And another thing I'm going to do here is use the template of the views to, well, hide the scope boxes and the section boxes. Will make everything look more neat. All right, this is much better. Next step, the room volumes. So this is another OKPy tool that runs as a user in the user mode here. So it's expecting the room parameter that we would like to inject in the 3D geometry we create. I'm going to use the names. This is what's most relevant for this model. And I'm going to use the comments because I don't want to create a parameter just for this. But I really should if this was a real project. Awesome. All right, and the color scheme was actually already applied in here. So yeah, I've been using the same model that I have before. Okay, so just so we see that the third tool will actually works when triggered from the ribbon, let's make a change to the color scheme. So the same one that's been used in the 3D view through filters. Switch to rooms, and then the name. So this is the one that's been applied in 3D. And I'm going to, well, pick something that's remarkable. So the cafeteria, or actually no, because we need it to be somewhere in the south wing of the building. So let's use the instruction name. All right, name, instruction. Here it is. So it used to be this blue, or this type of blue. In order to change it and not to miss it, we're going to switch it to yellow. Okay. All right, let's go back to our exploded axonometric. This was the blue it used to appear in, and we're going to run this tool. Now this one, again, if you want to see how it was built and well, grab it also, you can check out a video of the episode number 4, which you should get a link to in the screen right now. I'm going to add it later. So the room color fill scheme we're going to be bringing the settings from is the name. The view template we want to apply it to is this one. This is the one that's been applied to these views. And then the generic model parameter to filter on is comments, because that's the one we've injected name values into. Okay, you should see all of this update now. Beautiful. Well, that's exactly what I was expecting. Okay, so, well, I guess that's all you need to know in order to build ribbon buttons for Dynamo scripts or OKPy tools. It's very similar. All you need to know is, well, where to go find the settings and how to customize them to make them look as good as possible for your users. And yeah, not much more to say about that. Now, another thing that often gets asked whenever I introduce people to this way of creating ribbon buttons is, all right, now that I've built this ribbon, it looks really cool. I think that it can be useful. Now, how do I share it? How do I get my users to get the same stuff appear on their ribbon whenever they're working in Revit? And this is the next step of our video. Right now, we're going to be talking about deploying these ribbon settings in a local way. And by local, I mean free. So this is something that's available for everyone. There is no need for any subscription. Now, the export and import of ribbon button settings is going to be found again in the settings window in the quick access panel here, and down here at the bottom right with these two buttons. This one allows for an export, and this is the button you'll have to click in order to import things. But before you click this, you need to have stuff exported. So I'd say this is for you creating this deployment, and this will be for your users importing them. All right? So when you click this button, you are faced with two options. The first one is export paths only, and the second one is export all resources. There's another setting here for you to specify where you would like to export this. So I'm going to hit this button first. I'm going to use this episode 5 button folder because, well, this is episode 5. I'm going to call this link export. Okay. And I called it link export because for this first example, I'm going to use the first setting, which is export paths only. Now, what export paths only is a way for you to export links to your tools. It's going to generate a file that contains hyperlinks or links to all of the tools that you have imported in your ribbon settings, but it's not going to export the tools themselves. What this means is, in order for everyone who gets this export file to work, they will need to have access to the same locations you have because their computers will only be pointing at these tools. Now, the good thing about this type of deployment is this keeps things sort of centralized, meaning that if you make changes to this definition, their ribbon buttons are going to be pointing at the file, right? So if they run the tools through the ribbon, they will be getting the latest version available at this location. So this is why this deployment can be a good option. Another way to export things is to go through this second option here, which is export all resources. And what export all resources means is that, well, at the contrary of what I said about the first way of exporting things, which was export paths only, lets you export a bundle containing all of the resources that you want to make available for your users. So you're not only exporting the ribbon buttons, you're actually exporting the button settings as well as the definitions themselves, whether they're Dynamo tools or OKPy tools. You're exporting them with their icons, with their UI names. All of those customizations will be output in a file. And what that means is everyone who imports those settings into their computers will have an instance of those settings. So first user will have, well, the tools exported in their computer. The second user will have another different instance of the same tools, etc., etc. The good thing with this is you can send this to anyone and you're pretty sure it's going to work, right? Because, well, you're giving them the resources with the export. You're not just expecting them to have access to your location. And if, say, they don't have access to your drive or they have a different letter mapped to the same drive, things that could break things in the first export scenario, well, here, you're pretty sure that's not going to happen because Orkestra is just going to set up everything locally. This is not taking care of packages though. And this is also something that you will get with the online version, a centralized way to manage and deploy packages. A little more on that later. All right, so this is the second export option. Now this has exported everything there. Now if I remove these quick accesses that I just built with you during this video, okay, so you can see that they're not here anymore. And if I open that settings windows back and place myself in the shoes of a user who doesn't have quick accesses yet, can press this import settings. I can point at, well, an export file. This one, for example, total export. Okay. You can see here that there is no real choice between links or total export. The reason is because it's able to identify the type of export and act accordingly. It knows that this was a total export. And by the way, this is why it's asking for me to pick a location where it should unzip everything. So this is going to bring all of those resources that have been exported into my computer locally, and it's going to place them somewhere. By default, it's going to go into the program data Orkestra folder. But if you want to put them anywhere else, well, that's up to you. You can hit these three little buttons here and pick any location you like. Now, if I hit validate in here, it says the settings were imported successfully. And if I close, I can see that it's true. I can hit the refresh button and see my three tools appear in my ribbon with their icons. And if I hit run, well, they're going to get run from that location that they were just imported in. All right, so this is all for the local exports. It was pretty fast, but again, I think it's only fast because it's not too complicated. If there's anything that doesn't make complete sense, or if you have any questions, there's many ways you can ask them. First one would be by commenting on this video, and I'd be more than happy to answer. The second one is to go through the forum, which you can access through our website, www.orkestra.online, or, through its URL directly. It's forum.orkestra.online. Not too hard to remember. Okay. Now let's move on to the ultimate deployment experience. And for that, I'm just going to sort of revert back to an environment where I don't have anything deployed. So I'm going to remove all of these local quick accesses just so I can show you what that looks like. All right, let's do this. And we're back in a brand new and fresh session of Revit where I don't have any quick accesses set up. This is going to be a demonstration of how you can deploy things online. And just before I show you exactly how that can be done, I would just like to get back to the principle here. So if I were to describe the way Orkestra lets you deploy things, I would go with something that looks like this. It's all happening in the cloud. And what's extremely powerful compared to what we had earlier with the local versions is that once you push this in the cloud and grant access to people, well, there can be as many people as you want. You don't need to send them anything. You don't need to exchange any file. It's just going to simply pop on their computer magically, and it will always be up to date. Whatever the change you make, it will always be available in their computers half a second after it's been made. And as soon as they click on it, you're certain that they're looking at the most appropriate stuff. So this is what makes the Orkestra deployment, or some of what makes the Orkestra online deployment really powerful. Okay, now for the how you do that. So back in Revit, I'm going to log in this time. And this is the first time we do this in the channel. You hit this little character here and you enter some credentials. Or you can use login with SSO if you have that deployed in your company, because we have an Azure Active Directory integration. For now, I'm simply going to use some Orkestra credentials. I'm going to use this account that's called Design Technologist account because I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a design technologist now, right? So I'm logging into my account. First thing that's going to happen is I am going to get this tab here enabled. I don't only have access to the local stuff, I also have access to my online stuff now. And I can see that there's some content in here. There's a hub called My Company. There's a workspace called My Awesome Tools. And in there, I have the scope box to section box dynamo tool. If I switch to OKPy, I'll see that in the same location, the same online location, I have my 3OKPy tools. I won't spend too much time explaining all of this folder structure. We have an incredibly exciting tutorial series coming up in a couple of weeks tops. I'm really hoping to release that soon. I'll really stay tuned for that. So for now, let's just open the settings window once more. You'll see that I have access to this upper stuff here. This is the online stuff. Earlier, we only had this. And what I can do here is go to the online quick accesses, and then I can browse my workspaces. I only have one here, this My Awesome Tools workspace in my company hub, right? And right here, I can check out my Dynamo tools that I have. I can also use this little filter here to show the OKPy tools as well, or only the OKPy tools, where I can use the filters in order to manage my quick accesses. So right here, I want to see everything. I am going to push the scope box to section box tool, the exploded axonometric tool, the room volumes, and finally the 3D color scheme tool. Now I have all of these tools right here ready to be pushed. I have the exact same customization options that I had in the local parts. I even have one more, which is to group them in a dropdown, which we will not do for now. I'm just going to apply the same type of modifications I did earlier. Ready for deployment. All I have to do is hit this little push to cloud button. All right, it says that it has all been successfully updated. Now I have the YouTube channel tab with all the quick access buttons here in the My Company panel. This is exactly how I just customized them. So this is looking good. Now, here's where it becomes really different when you deploy online compared to deploying locally. Difference is all you have to do when you can go online is right click here, any location on your company's hub, and go to its settings. Now we have a lot of very cool stuff happening right here. I will only focus on this first part. Again, the rest will be covered in our awesome tutorial series that's to come in a couple of weeks. And I'm simply going to focus on the users who have access to this workspace. Now, what I can do when I'm online, when I have an account and I have users who have accounts as well, is I can hit this button here, and then I can grant them access to the space. Now, the account I'm going to be using here is one that's called Mr. User at Orkestra.online. And I'm going to grant them a user level, not an admin level. There are differences between these two, which will be covered in the future as well. For now, let's just grant access to Mr. User. Here they are. And what we're going to do now is, again, close this session of Revit, and I'm going to play another role now, the role of Mr. User. And we will see what happens on their computer whenever they log into Orkestra. All right, so I'll see you in a second. And we're back in Revit for the last time. I'm not logged in yet. I can tell from the gray background on this little character here. It's blue whenever we're logged in. And as you can see, there are no quick accesses set here whatsoever. I don't have my YouTube channel tab with my company panel, etc. And what I'm going to do here is log in using Mr. User's account. So that's the person who we've granted access to earlier in the video. They share the same password, so I'm not going to change that. I'm simply going to hit the login button, and we're going to witness Orkestra's magic. Here we go. Every time a user logs into Orkestra, they will get all the quick accesses that you have made available to them, as well as all the workspaces and the content that you have made available to them, whether it's Dynamo or OKPy content. or Grasshopper content in Rhino, because we do that too. So there is really not much to worry about, especially since the packages are taken care of as well. Every time Mr. User hits this button, they're going to get the latest version that's been pushed by the admin, the design technologist. Even if I'm logged in right now and the design technologist makes a modification to the tool, and then I hit it like a second later, I'm going to get that last modification. It's that fast. So this is all pointing at the same location. If the admin changes the icon, it's going to update it here as well. This all makes things much more easy to manage. And with all this customization, it lets administrators build amazing ribbon tools that you would never guess are Dynamo tools or OKPy tools. All right, so yeah, this is it for this video about building ribbons for Revit using Orkestra. I hope you found it interesting. Again, feel free to reach out through the comments on this video, through the forum. I'm going to put all the content that I've used today as a download in the comments of this video. I'm going to put local exports as well, so you can import it on your computer. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you in episode 6. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Bye bye.